Well, Helldivers, I know I'm supposed to be doing a build video this week, but instead we're going to do a tier list.
Liar!
Now, the reason for that is the developers are basically fluffing up the community with some tidbits and plans of the next balance and kind of what they're aiming for, and we're supposed to have a blog post later this week. So I feel like I really need to get out these tier lists so that way when they do eventually, release the patch notes with the balance, then it'll be really easy for me to just make one comprehensive video on the changes and then where all these guns kind of like swap places to. So that's why we're going to get this tier list out of the way. Apologize for that. But today we're going to be doing the energy weapons, the explosive weapons, and then yeah, we got to throw in the marksman weapons as well. There's only 2 of them. And at the end, we'll do a little channel update, a little chit chat, and yeah, let's get into the video. Before we get into the video, let's go over a little bit of a disclaimer. My tier list is my tier list. If you like one of these weapons and I rate them poorly, don't listen to my dumbass. This is just my list, what I like to, what I like to use, what I find fun and effective. So don't put too much weight into where I put some of these. Feel free to always just disagree in the comments. Just do it respectfully, which everybody has, thankfully. And yeah, we're all just talking about a video game we all like. So don't take this with too much weight. This is just my list. And with this list, let's go over the categories. Let's go over S tier. S tier for me is something that punches above its weight as a primary weapon. Maybe borderline OP, just like a super viable and fun weapon overall. A tier is still just very viable, very fun, good weapon overall. Maybe a little bit of tweaks, but super effective. B tier is it's a good weapon, a little bit of work maybe. C tier, it needs some help, still viable, still find it fun. These weapons are going to be based off of the higher tier, so like 7, 8, 9, 10, those type of missions. And then D tier is don't use for me. I will never pick it up. It's usually trash and needs to be taken out back and shot and redone. I am going to be breaking these weapons down into bugs and bots. They do play differently, and some weapons are more effective against one faction than the other. So I'll eventually, when I do eventually do my master list, it'll be split up that way as well. So first up, real quick, let's talk about the Marksman Rifles. We got the standard diligence, and then we got the counter sniper diligence. Now, these weapons for me, they're not as effective as they should be when you compare them to other weapons that kind of fill that similar role and just do a much better job. Let's start with the bugs. For the counter sniper for me, it sits in a low B tier. I don't think it can go any higher than that for me. And then the regular diligence, that goes in a low C tier. It's weird because sometimes I feel like these weapons do really pop off, and then other times I feel like they're abysmal, so that's kind of where they sit for me. I do think they perform a little bit better against the bots just because of the head crit spots, and it only taken a few rounds to put down something like a berserker. So for me, the counter sniper would sit in a mid to low B tier, but then that standard diligence for me, it's just still, I would put it low B tier, maybe high C tier, but for this list, I'll just put it at the low end of B tier. So next up, we're going to talk about the explosive category. Now, I do fancy myself a little bit of a Daryl Dixon in space, so we're going to talk about the crossbow. I'm going to rank this one probably in the mid B tier for both bugs and bots, and that's because for me, the crossbow is the only like utility primary we have. So that novelty of it, I rate highly, and the fact that it's one-handed. If you're using this thing just to chaff, clear, and kill, I can understand why you would put it in C tier or even D tier. But the fact is, I feel like this is a really great utility weapon. The explosive bolts on it really do let you just take something like the stalwart machine gun as your stratagem. It's a weird pick, it's a weird combo, but it's something that I gravitate towards and have a lot of fun with. But yeah, the new changes to the crossbow were very good. The one-handed nature of it now, you can do a little bit of running gun, but the clip size mag on it is way too low to be a chaff clear. But yeah, as the only basically utility primary weapon, this does sit in the middle of B tier for me. Next up, let's talk about the first weapon that I would compare the Marksman Rifles to, and kind of why they sit where they are. And this weapon just does their job differently, but kind of just better, and that's the Eruptor. The Eruptor is basically a bolt action sniper with explosive rounds. For me, for the bugs, it sits in a lower A tier just because it's rate of fire, but don't let me fool you here. Sitting up on a high ground and just laying into some chaff with this thing, it feels really good. For the bots, it's same spot, low A tier. It's got that medium armor penetration, so you can be hitting devastators from afar. and then a little bit of explosive nature. Now I know when it first came out, I would put this thing at S tier because shrapnel was busted, and then they basically gutted it, and I would have put it in D tier. But now they brought it back up to being useful, and I am a fan of that bolt action sniper gameplay, so that's why it sits in A tier for me. And the last explosive weapon we have is the Jar 5 Dominator. This thing is why the Marksman Rifles sit where they are. The Jar 5 is basically the DMR from Halo. This thing it punches really hard, medium armor penetration, okay ammo economy, but it hits like a truck. The recoil is pretty noticeable when you're shooting. Using something like peak physique armor really helps out with this, makes this feel a lot better. For the bugs, this thing sits in high B tier. I think it's really good. And then for the bots, I think it performs in A tier for me for that medium armor because of that medium armor penetration and dealing with devastators. So yeah, Jar 5 Dominator, very good. Again, you look at the Jar 5 Dominator, then you look at the Marksman Rifles. They kind of have the similar playstyle. It's just the Jar 5 is just so much better in my opinion. So that's the explosives. So moving on to the energy weapons. Let's get the GOAT out of the way, and that's the sickle. For the bugs, this is a top of the line A tier weapon. This is the ideal assault rifle we all want, but it's in the energy category. The rate of fire on this makes the damage really good, and then also the fact that if you have a little bit of trigger discipline, the ammo will never run out. And there's virtually no recoil with this as well, so you get that precision aim. That's why for the bots as well, it sits in that it also sits in A tier. I put it a little bit lower because I do value against the bots that explosive and medium armor penetration, but still A tier, very viable. Again, that precision laser machine gun nature of it against weak spots. A tier, A tier, A tier. Next up, let's talk about the Plasma Punisher. This is essentially a grenade launcher energy weapon. Again, explosive ammunition. I think it might be medium armor penetration as well. I don't know, but it doesn't matter because explosive ammo in general basically takes out all the medium enemies anyways. For the bugs, it sits at low A tier for me, and for the bots, high A tier. This thing does really good stagger damage, just overall a well-performing weapon and a workhorse just to be reckoned with on the battlefield. Let's move on to another very good weapon, and that is the Arc Blitzer. This is essentially a lightning shotgun that they patched to have better ease of use because the bolts don't get stuck on ground or bodies as often. You can just hold down the trigger and just keep shooting. It does great stagger damage. It goes through medium armor penetration, or I guess it just ignores armor altogether. A very good chaff clear. This will keep the bugs off you, no problem. So that's why it sits really high on the bug tier list. For the bots, I put it in high B, just because the nature of the weapon being that close. I don't like to get up and close with the bots, but it does stagger them. It will take down devastators. It's just the only thing. If you have a devastator off in the distance, that thing's gonna snipe you while you're like keeping a group stun locked or something like that. But still, high B tier for me for the bots as well. It's very good. And then let's move on to a weapon I really want to put into S tier, and that is the Scorcher. Unfortunately, I do think the ammo economy hurts it enough to take it out of S tier, but for bugs, this is a mid A tier weapon for me. This is a great weapon to take into higher difficulty because of its explosive nature, and it handles those medium armor enemies really well, like the bile spewers. For the bots, this sits at the top of the line A tier for me because this thing punches above its weight in the fact that it is a very viable way to take out gunships, and not many primary weapons can do that reliably because this thing is semi-automatic. It's very good. So yeah, A tier in both enemy lists for me. No question about that. Now we might begin to, is it really controversial to say that the sickle is not the sickle? I always mix these two up. The scythe. Scythe is not very good to me. I don't like the scythe. For both bugs and bots, this sits in mid to low C tier. I kind of want to put it in D tier, but you know, I think it just comes down to personal preference for me on this weapon. I don't like it very much. I know it can never run out of ammo if you have that same trigger discipline, but you just look at this and then you look at the sickle and you're like, So I don't like the scythe at all. This sits in low C tier for me for both bugs and bots. Not a fan. Now we got the Purifier. Ugh, the Purifier. Man, on paper, this thing looks like it's going to be so much better than it is. For me, the biggest thing is the ease of use. Getting out of rhythm with this weapon feels really bad, and when shit hits the fan on higher difficulties, I will not ever rely on this weapon. I've tried it so many times, and it just continues to let me down. I want to love it, I really do, For the bots, it might be a little bit better, so I put it in maybe mid C tier, but it needs a lot of help. Bugs wise, this is low C tier, and again, we're ranking these on the higher tier difficulties. I just don't think the Purifier brings anything of value that these other weapons do. So yeah, that's where that one sits. So here's my list overall. Feel free to disagree with it and let me know down in the comments what you would like swap around. A little bit of an update with the channel. Now, I know the elephant in the room for the Helldivers 2 community is Space Marine 2 comes out later this week for early access. I was a big fan of Space Marine 1. It was like a blockbuster action game that did not overstay its welcome. It sat there and gave you a great time, and then when it was done, it was done. And the PvP on it was actually pretty fun. I remember getting to max rank on that when it came out. Will I be covering Space Marine 2? Probably not. I'm a small channel. Maybe if I will cover it down the line if it is a game that sticks with me, like Helldivers 2 has. Helldivers 2 has really, I love this game so much. So maybe if it's like turns into something like that, I'll cover it eventually, because it is gonna have like some seasons and stuff. So we'll see. But there's gonna be much better content creators that are gonna cover Space Marine 2. So I don't really feel like I need to, because when it comes to me, this channel is just mostly fun stuff about Helldivers 2. I'm not a news channel. I'm not going to cover, what the former CEO says on Twitter or Discord all the time. Now, patch notes, like official patch notes, those are something I will cover, because that's actually tangible stuff that's in game. Because I don't want to like jump on like a news wagon when like the CEO says, "Hey, we're thinking about swords." I know there's a saber in Helldivers 1, but I don't think a sword anytime soon is coming to Helldivers 2 with the state of the game. So I wouldn't want to like get people's hopes up on that shit. So that just ain't me. Yeah, but for me, yeah, Helldivers 2 still where it's at. I have like a wheelhouse of games that I play all the time. Obviously Helldivers 2. I'm gonna be jumping into some Space Marine 2, a little bit of Destiny, but Destiny's kind of down at the moment. I'm actually a huge fan of like D&D, like fantasy games. So like I still play like a lot of Baldur's Gate 3. And usually keep like an MMO in my wheelhouse, usually Final Fantasy 14 or Guild Wars 2. But sticking with Helldivers 2 here, nothing's going to change on that front. If I feel really compelled to make Space Marine 2 content, I will. But it's not, Space Marine 2's coming out, Helldivers 2's dead. It's like, nah, it ain't like that. I'm still having a lot of fun with Helldivers 2, despite, the current community sentiment with balance. But I think they'll figure it out, hopefully. Either way, having fun with it. So I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace!